Hey, we'll do this outside a little bit, get that sun right in my eyeballs. Nice, nice, big fan of that. I'm talking about this Prince DB100. Pretty interesting racket. I will give you some close-up shots here in just a second and talk about what really caught my eye with this racket. It's currently strung with Enso by Tourmaline. This is my first time hitting with the pink one. I think the snapback on this might be a little bit better than the gray one. That is to be determined. And if you're interested in trying out these strings, you can use my coupon code TIMEFORTENNIS, link below in the description as usual. We'll definitely cut to some playtest footage, but first, let's talk about what makes this racket interesting. All right, we got this down side by side with the Pure Aero 98. And you can tell that the head shape is a little bit longer, and the crosses in most regards are a little bit closer, especially right here. You can see that the Pure Aero continues to stay more open here, right there, as you go down. And the Pure Aero 98's bottom cross is much more close to the end than it is here. It almost looks like this part of the racket stretches out on the Prince. Now, as I'm here, this is one of the more interesting parts of the racket. This is the double bridge system. I never saw it before, so I felt like a lot of other people never did. And that's probably true, but quite a few people are also familiar with this system. And it definitely dampens the racket quite a lot. The strings run pretty tight through here. As you can see, there's actually like no grommet holes. It goes right through the frame. And if you get real close up, you can see the strings in there. Grommets on this side. And it definitely dampens the frame quite a lot. The beam is notably thicker than a Pure Aero 98. And it's actually a pretty different frame. I would not categorize these as too similar playing, if that makes sense. And if you know me, I obviously care a lot about parallel drilling and small grommets. All these strings come out real clean. They look great. I know a lot of people make fun of me for this, but some of you get it, some of you don't, and some of you don't care, even if you do get it, so it's cool. But that's part of what caught my eye. It's rare to find a racket that really ticks all the boxes, and every time one does, I gotta try it. Another intriguing detail of this racket is that you can only get it in Japan. So that's what I did. I had to order one from Japan, get it shipped here, and string it up myself, basically commit to the purchase of this racket because there's no demos out here. And that exclusivity might have gotten the best of me just a little bit, but ultimately, it's the fact that on paper, this racket seems pretty compatible with my playstyle, and it has that parallel drilling with small grommets. And that's just a combination I can't really turn down. Kind of a cool looking racket too. It's got like a neon sorbet thing going on, and when the grommets and headguard match the paint job, I always think that's cool. But let's get into what I actually thought about this racket. So the Pure Aero 98 is my reference point for what I want in a racket. That is the one to beat for now, and it has been for quite some time. It's a really good racket, and I think for someone that hits with a lot of power and topspin but does want that touch and control sometimes, it has just the right amount of compromise in all those things. And I can't stress enough how important it is that I can get really good topspin, especially with a higher power racket for my game style. And the Pure Aero 98 is one of the most spin-friendly rackets on the market, but it's definitely not overly powerful, and I think it has pretty good control and touch, especially for the type of racket that it is. So how does this Beast DB100 compare? I don't really know if I'm going to do a whole pros and cons thing, but I'll try to quickly break down what my impressions are, and we'll cut in and out of some playtest footage here. It's a somewhat powerful racket, and it does an okay job at generating spin, but it's not a spin monster. And the problem with that for me is the racket seems kind of launchy, which can be fine if you're able to generate really good spin, but with this racket I feel like you're kind of not. It hits a somewhat flatter ball and wants to launch it when you start hitting harder. And for my playstyle, that's just a recipe for a lot of balls to fly out. I also don't feel super connected to the ball, and I think that does have something to do with this double bridge system here in the throat. A lot of the feedback feels very dampened, and I think that is also exaggerated by the fact that this racket beam is thicker. So some characteristics of this racket are inherently dampened, and I think that is furthered by dampening some of the feedback right at the throat, where the strings closest to the handle are very muted. And there could be other things going on that are influencing that feel and that sensation and that ball launching tendency that I can't quite put my finger on. But part of what makes this racket probably launchier is the fact that the mains are kind of long. They're actually extended to the back of the throat here because the strings sit loose and aren't really secure until down here. In a lot of ways, this racket actually reminds me of like an E-Zone 100, which is a very powerful racket and not great at generating spin, but it's okay. Although I'd say this racket is definitely more comfortable than that. So if you're an E-Zone 100 type of person and you want something kind of exotic and different and way more comfortable, this could be a cool option for you. But if you like 16x19 string patterns because of the way that they pocket a ball or the type of topspin and power that they offer you, I don't know if this would be your style. When I initially got this racket, I played with it a 1/4 inch extended. That is to say, the first thing I did was extend this 1/4 inch. So I removed the butt cap, put a head one on, and spaced it about 1/4 inch away. And I put a bunch of lead under the 3 and 9 areas of the grommet, and that's how I got to another racket. And at that time I had ether strung with Wasabi X in the mains. Just did a video on that string combination if you want to check it out. Really, really good string combo. But I cut out those strings because I wanted to remove the lead tape I had under the grommet and instead placed it at the 12 and 6 to see what that did for the playing characteristics of the racket. It felt a little bit more spin friendly, slightly less stable, but it still felt quite launchy. Oh, and I also undid the extension at that time, so I was playing with it at standard length when I switched the lead positioning around and strung it up with Enzo, which we have in here now. Generally speaking, I'm not a fan of super thick beams, partly because it means a stiffer hoop, and for somebody with as brushy of a stroke as I have sometimes, and a really aggressive slice, having a slightly thicker beam actually greatly increases the odds of shanking a ball. That being said, I never felt like this racket was great at hitting a good slice, and that's just on top of it being a little bit shank prone, but that's going to be true for anything with a thick beam like this. So that's not really a knock on the racket, but on paper that's definitely a quality I try to avoid. Pretty much for every reason, or every quality that a thicker beam would bring to a tennis racket, as well as the side effects. This racket also has a foam-filled handle, which I put 2 pretty long screws in to bring some of the weight towards the handle. The racket is actually quite balanced, which is not quite how I want it. For a lot of rackets I generally add between 10 to 15 grams in the handle to make it a few more points headlight and whippier. And it took a lot of weight to get this racket to feel like that at all. Stay tuned for more content on Enso, which I have in the prints here. In the Pure Aero 98, I actually have Weisskannon Ultra Cable in the mains with Tourline Wasabi X in the crosses. And I'm doing this mostly to get to know Weisskannon, and I've been using Wasabi X so consistently in the crosses that I thought it's just best if I stick to what I've been using. So we're doing a hybrid, not a full bed, but I know Wasabi X really well, and I know my other mains really well. I think I'll be able to tell what differences are coming from Weisskannon in this hybrid. So we'll see. I think I'll be hitting with this today, but that'll be a different video. And if you want to support me and save some money, you can use my coupon codes in the description. Great way to support me and the channel, as well as the brands I have some affiliations with. Tourline and Restring Zero make my favorite strings, and I have coupon codes for both of them down below. RTP also makes some really innovative products. You should check them out. And Grip Liner, as well as my Amazon storefront, which has a lot of the products you might see in the background of my videos. My stringing machine, tape, slant boards, all kinds of stuff. So if you want to see my Amazon storefront, link for that is down below as well. You can also follow me on Instagram. You'll see all that down there. You can also buy me a coffee and I will shout you out in my next video. And somebody recently did buy me coffee, so let's cut to some footage of me drinking said coffee. And that is where we will end the video. I appreciate you guys so much for watching and supporting, and that concludes my review and probably my time with this Prince racket. Oh, and for anybody that cares, the handle is quite long, in case you're interested in this racket. The Pure Aero 98 has a relatively long handle. The Prince has an even slightly longer one. I don't think anybody with a two-handed backhand would feel like this handle is too short, but you might think your overgrip is too short. Anyway, not the racket for me, but maybe the racket for you. All right, guys, I'll catch you in a future video. And yeah, without further ado, until next time, bye.